First part of session 52, let's get into what I would call the inner and outer journeys. Let's begin. I'm calling this video the inner and outer journeys because the first part of this session, which I'm going to try to cover until we get into Wanderers, which is where they sort of switch to the next topic, is philosophically, I think it is the points that are expressed here, even though they're talking about travel and other stuff. But you can see, and I think that's the message that I want to emphasize, even though we're going to read it obviously as it is, but you will see that there's always a deeper meaning into what they're talking about. So it's going to be interesting because this is something that we see, especially in the seeker, the person who has sparked that curiosity, that awareness of itself, and it wants to seek and know and understand this reality. So there's several interesting points that we can take out of this conversation between Don and Ra in session 52. There's nothing to cover from last session other than the conversation that they were having before, which was about travel and how to other densities travel, even third density travels interstellarly and interdimensionally. So that's what leads into this first question. So we can go right away. And we have Dawn not asking the condition of Carla in the first question, I guess because she was always in the same condition. I don't know. But the first question that we have straight from Dawn is, in the previous session, you stated that the other type of experience is the fourth, fifth, and sixth densities of other galaxies, and some within your own galaxy, which have learned necessary disciplines of personality to view the universe as one being, and therefore are able to proceed from locus to locus by thought alone, materializing the necessary craft. Dawn continues, I would like to ask you, when you say that fourth, fifth, and sixth densities of other galaxies, and some within your own galaxy, are you stating here that more of the entities in other galaxies have developed the abilities of personality than have in this galaxy for this type of, shall I say, travel? I am using the term galaxy with respect to the lenticular shape of 250 billion stars. So you should know where this question is heading. If not, I'll explain it in a little bit. Ra says, we have once again used a meaning for this term, galaxy, that does not lie within your vocabulary at this time, if you will call it so. We refer to your star system. It is incorrect to assume that other star systems are more able to manipulate the dimensions than your own. It is merely that there are many other systems besides your own. So this is something that they clarified, I think, in the teens sessions, 17, 15, somewhere around there, I think, where Ron had used, there we go, where's Ron? Leave me a comment, Ron. The social memory complex Ra and Dawn said in their conversation that galaxy term that Ra had used for the star system. We can see the relationship, just like an atom is sort of like a solar system or even a galaxy. So it just seems to be the holographic nature of reality. We can even say that the local group which our Milky Way is part of, with Andromeda and other NGs that are around our system, they can also be seen as a sort of galaxy, all of them together. And then you could go to the clusters, and then the super clusters and the mega clusters and so on. I mean, it's just, the more we see out, the more we're gonna see the same thing we see inside. So it's no surprise that the human stands in the middle, in between what is the smallest thing and the biggest thing, because we are in the middle of awareness. So we're always going to feel in the middle. You are the middle of the universe. In fact, I think even conventional science admits this, that you are at the center of the universe, because the universe has no edges. Of course, you are awareness. So you can see how the study of the mind, and what I think it's probably a deviated term here to use mysticism, but mysticism in general equals scientific inquiry. So self-inquiry is scientific inquiry. Anyhow, I'm going off track. The point is that Ra had said galaxy before, and they meant the solar system. Now, Don's question was, are you saying that other galaxies have more capabilities than us? Like, they have developed more disciplines of personality than us? And so Ra corrects, first, that they meant star system, and two, that they that there is no, it is incorrect to assume that other star systems are able to develop or manipulate the dimensions more than us. And it's funny because there's so much confusion here, because they say other star systems are correct. You see, they use galaxy to refer to the star systems. Now Don said, okay, so you're talking about other galaxies, and they're able to develop more stuff, whatever it is. And then Ra says it is incorrect to assume that other star systems. Now they're saying star systems to galaxies. It's just funny how this gets all mixed. And the reason why this gets mixed is because perception. We're looking at the universe through the human perception. So that means that when people ask me, how is fourth density going to look? And I say, I don't know. First, even in my assumptions, with all the metaphysical knowledge that I may have, or the little metaphysical knowledge that I may have, we are thinking as humans, how are things going to look to the human eye in fourth density? Well, that's an impossibility, because there are no humans in fourth density. There is a fourth density evolved human being that has more perception now. So, how are things going to sound or taste or smell? We don't know. We will develop those. And so in fifth and sixth. And this lends to the imagination that in other densities, you for sure perceive reality from a different perspective, or not even a perspective, a different sensory system. So for them, for Ra, they see galaxies probably in atoms. They, see the infinity, or at least perceive the potential infinity in everything, and they see the holographic nature of reality. I mean, they've even stated, which is, it really baffles the mind of a human, they've stated that they could not see us as separate beings. They see us as one. So they deal with us in terms of, the one you call Albert, or the one you call Robert, or instruments, and mind, body, spirit complexes, and so on, because that's just how they see reality. It's a different sensory system. How it is, I don't know. I'm a human. Don't ask me. So in that case, I think this is why they see it as galaxies, and they say, well, galaxies, atoms, for them it's almost like one and the same. You see, when you study the law of one, especially the raw material, you get these little glimpses into how they perceive reality. Even mathematics for them is kind of problematic, because they don't use mathematics, even though mathematics is nature of the universe and how we measure. It's the basis for measuring everything. But I guess when you're melting into infinity, measuring starts to become kind of irrelevant or muddied, degree. So you have to give something. Anyhow, that's the correction. Galaxy, and that everybody's able to develop those disciplines of personality. So question 2, we're going to Don again, where he says, thank you. I think that possibly I am on an important point here, because it seems to me that the great work in evolution is the discipline of personality. And it seems that we have two types of moving around the universe. One stemming from disciplines of personality, and the other stemming from what you call the slingshot effect. I won't even get into the sublight speed because I don't consider that too important. He continues, and I only consider this material important with respect to the fact that we are investigating discipline of personality. Thus, the use of the slingshot effect for travel, is that what you might call an intellectual or a left brain type of involvement of understanding rather than a right brain type? Here is where we are going to get into the gist of this session, at least this video. So Ross says, your perception on this point is extensive. You penetrate the outer teaching. We prefer not to utilize the terminology of right and left brain due to the inaccuracies of this terminology. Some functions are repetitive or redundant in both lobes, and further, to some entities the functions of the right and left are reversed. However, the heart of the query is worth some consideration. Yes, it is. Ra continues and says, the technology of which you as a social complex are so enamored at this time is but the birthing of the manipulation of the intelligent energy of the sublogos, which, when carried much further, may evolve into technology capable of using the gravitic effects of which we spoke. We note that this term is not accurate, but there is no closer term. Okay. Before I get any further, my mouse is freaking out, and there we go, a little bit more fluid. So, a couple of things. They corrected the use of the term left and right brain, which, again, it's a very simplistic way to denominate what a certain thinking is, a certain polarity that exists everywhere. You know, since we have a more dominant left brain, we may say that we're logical, that we're more into reason and the material and the physical universe, and if we're right dominant, then we may see there's more intuition and so on. But like Ra said, you know, it's not very scientific or accurate to say, you know, left brain and right brain. That's just common speech, let's put it that way. So they said that, and you know, they basically went on to say, okay, so there's more to this question that deserves attention, and that is important. I forgot what they said exactly, but that's what they meant, you know. And now they're going to tackle that. Let's see, yeah. So the first part of this is, let me just give my introduction to what I consider this to be. You see, there is an outer way to perceive the world, and then there is the inner way. Neither is more important than the other. Much like saying, you know, is the left more important than the right side? Whatever attributes we want to give to the brain. No, they work in conjunction. You see? So there is the inner seeking and the outer seeking. You know, inner understanding and outer understanding. Now, when they say the technology of which you as a social complex are so enamored, they're talking about science as we know it, the technology that has developed through scientific empirical evidence, reduction of science, and what we know as the ruling science or scientific method that we know. Because it is completely correct to also say that, say, for example, the study of the mind, and I'm not saying psychology here, psychology in the Western sense, but say Buddhism, or simply non-dual understandings of reality, that is a scientific inquiry. In fact, it is more scientific because it is based on experience. And science is based on experience and things that we can experience and see and observe, where the mind is actually the one observing. So, or it's actually not the mind, but consciousness, but just as a consensus to, the split personality of mind and matter between consciousness and mind. then we can see that the only portion of ourselves having experiences is the mind, and all that process is being ultimately seen by consciousness. So this is scientific inquiry as well. That's why self-inquiry or inner seeking is a path. But it's not very useful to put rockets in the moon and so on. So we are enamored with this technology that can do things outside, not inside, and this is why we see so much struggle. I believe that to be the case. This is my speculation. It's not the raw material saying it, but this is just my speculation and my formation as a philosopher in what little I know about the Eastern and the Western philosophies. That is the disjunction that we have there, which means, as Ra says, is the manipulation of intelligent energy. We're using the manipulation of intelligent energy of the sub-logos, which, when carried much further, meaning that when we manipulate intelligent energy more and more through external means. Now bear in mind that we can use intelligent energy inwardly, and that's what Ra is mostly concerned with in the teachings. The indigo ray activation, or the indigo ray work, the adept's work, is working with intelligent energy, but in an inner way, and we're going to get to that. So they say, this may develop into technology capable of using the gravitic effects of which we spoke, the slingshot effect. Now in the last video, I believe, I said I had no idea of what the slingshot effect was, and when I reread this session, and I read the word gravitic effect from Ra, I said, how come I didn't think about this? We know that the technology that is used for UFOs, so-called UFOs, it's just electrogravitics. Anti-gravity, so-called, it's electrogravitics. Is the way to navigate the electromagnetism of the universe. The universe is it's filled with these connections, let's say. Much like a water is the medium for a fish to swim, and they don't swim by splashing water or moving water around them. They actually do it by currents. It's easier because it creates like pockets in which they can move without too much effort. That's the beauty of a fish swimming. Same is a bird flying. They don't flap their wings only. They find pockets of air where they can just move. In the same way, in gravity, there are pockets of electromagnetic fields that extend, and by using certain technology, we can use and move, effortlessly, or with some effort, which is really what these ships use. So when this is carried out to a higher degree, then this is what they are talking to me. This is another speculation because they use the word gravitic effects, and to me that's a way of travel that Don didn't understand back in 1981. This was being further developed and researched back then by the Secret Space Program, which is just a military-industrial complex here in the United States, at least, where they were experimenting with all of this. I mean, it had been decades already. For instance, the Roswell crash and all that stuff. Already that they had been using this technology. Actually, it goes even back to, which I mentioned before, the Glocke, which was the space. And this wasn't a spaceship. I don't know how far it got. I don't even know, how far they went with that. But the Nazi Germany, they were experimenting with this technology back then, and that was the bell-shaped craft, which is exactly what Ra was using. Ra, it's a Nazi. Okay, I think I covered that in the Spanish video. The possibility of that. Actually, let me just cover it here. Just my speculation. Ra had actually said that they manifested as a bell-shaped craft, which again resembles the technology of Die Glocke, which was the one being researched in Nazi Germany. So what I think is that I think it was one of the different I forget, the Thule Society or so in Germany that was channeling information. They were getting technological information they probably got, you know, this information for them, and I forgot, it was Maria, I forgot her last name, beautiful Nordic looking woman that was channeling this information for them. Ostrich, Maria Ostrich, I think it is. I'm so tempted to Google it right now, but whichever the case may be, they got information, so they probably got this technology from channeling, and they started developing this bell-shaped craft, which is probably Ra said, hey, you know, people want to know technology, here you go, and then once again they're like, oh my god, again. But whatever, that's what happened. In any case, I'm going too much in speculation. That's what I think is this. And I like that Ra says, we know that this term is not accurate, but there is no closer term, the gravitic effects, because I don't think there was any technology at that time publicly, at least that Don knew, and Ra wouldn't infringe much on their free will. But again, I'm going off track here. So that is the outer seeking, you know, developing craft and external technology for means of travel. And of course, this is going to tie it in beautifully later on in this video. So let's finish up. There's more to say. Ra says, therefore, the use of technology to manipulate that outside the self is far, far less of an aid to personal evolution than the disciplines of the mind-body-spirit complex, resulting in the whole knowledge of the self in the microcosm and macrocosm. Which means, of course, that this technology will not help us to understand ourselves. Look at scientists. They actually have gotten to the point where they deny the possibility of life after death, or even, you know, anything that it can be spiritual. This is coming from a guy who had more than 2 decades of formation in science and rejecting any sort of spirituality. I know exactly how this feels, and I know why, because I was there for over 2.5 decades, disbelieving anything and just believing in pure science. So this is what it causes to you. You know, the more you get into this, the more you denigrate the possibility of spirituality. It doesn't have to be this way, though. But I'm not going to get into that. You can develop some external technology. Like Alan Watts used to say, you know, if you love nature, you will use this technology to love it even more. But if you hate nature, which is what we do, we hate nature, we think we're in competition with nature, we have to survive. You know, we are here, we're strangers in this land, so we're going to submit it, or beat it into submission. So that's why Ra says, you know, that this is far less of an aid to personal evolution than the disciplines of the mind-body-spirit complex, resulting in the knowledge of the self, basically, in the microcosm and macrocosm. So Ra continues, says, to the disciplined entity, all things are open and free. The discipline which opens the universes opens also the gateways to evolution. The difference is that of choosing either to hitchhike to a place where beauty may be seen, or to walk, step by step, independent and free in this independence, to praise the strength to walk and the opportunity for the awareness of beauty. I'm going to finish this up. This is beautiful. Ra continues and says, the hitchhiker, instead, is distracted by conversation and the vagaries of the road, and dependent upon the whims of others, is concerned to make the appointment in time. The hitchhiker sees the same beauty, but has not prepared itself for the establishment in the roots of mind of the experience. So, nice analogy. Let's go back to where they say, to the disciplined entity, all things are open and free. To this disciplined entity, well, first of all, I mean, if you explore yourself, and this is, of course, we're talking about mystical, mystics, not mystical, mystics who are so devoted to this, this exploration of the self, and this is where it takes you. Like, this is the travel. When some people have mentioned that they can, you know, the astral travel and other types of feeling that you're traveling, you're exploring that inner self. This is what it means. You can use this technology, this inner technology, to travel the universe. There is a part of what Ross said that to the entity who has penetrated violet ray, he can walk the universe unfettered or something like that. That means that if you get to that point, you develop yourself to that degree, you can just travel the whole universe. You don't need to have a craft. You materialize your craft, which is what some people in some occultist teachings, they call the Merkaba, your Merkaba. You activate that and you just travel. That's your vehicle of travel. So this is what's being explained here, that the discipline entity, all things are open and free. The discipline which opens the universes opens also the gateways of evolution, which is another thing. I mean, not only are you able to travel, you don't do it because you want to travel. You do it because you're evolving as an entity by renouncing. And this is what it's funny how religion twists everything, right? But I remember hearing a lot about renounce material stuff, and people would get rid of their belongings and stuff, which is again very symbolic and nice. But renouncing is a mental thing. You're renouncing your association with the physical vehicle. You're understanding your nature. Your nature is not thoughts. Your nature is not experiences. Your nature is not any of that. Your nature is being. And when you renounce the external world and you go more into yourself, you realize that through your nature, by being connected to everything, you can be anywhere. So, this is why it's a twofold thing, because it's a 2-for-1. Basically, you get evolution and travel at the same time. The difference is that of choosing either to hitchhike, and here they go to the analogy where they say that, it's you either hitchhike, which, you get a ride basically, and to a place where beauty may be seen, or to walk step by step. It's very different to, travel directly on a spacecraft, and you're distracted. What do they say? Distracted by conversation and the vagaries of the road, and dependent upon the whims of others. Yes, you are, because you're concerned with the outer world and the people and all this stuff. Is concerned to make the appointment in time. The hitchhiker sees the same beauty, but has not prepared itself for the establishment in the roots of mind of the experience. So the hitchhiker may see the beauty of this travel. Oh man, I can go on for a while talking about this, and what I've heard about, electrogravitic travel, which kind of like creates a states of consciousness in people, but they're not prepared for this experience, even though they have a great experience, but they don't know. It's like I could actually equate this to a psychedelic experience, where people say, "Oh, I was enlightened," with a psychedelic experience. They are enlightening, and don't get me wrong, I have a great respect and love for psychedelics, but what I'm referring here to is the association that we may have with that, claiming that to be, the thing, and we're just not prepared for it. It's not. It is not the step-by-step journey that we can and must have if we are to evolve spiritually. I mean, this has to be taken into a day-to-day thing. It's not something suddenly that happens to you. So much to talk about this, but that is the kind of analogy that Ra is saying here. It's just, you either prepare yourself and go, with your own nature, or you manipulate nature for your own self. So it's like using manipulation for the self, the ego self, or using your own nature for your own beingness. I don't know. Hope that makes sense. Probably doesn't. Let's go to question 3. Don says, I would ask this question in order to understand the mental disciplines and how they evolve. Do 4th, 5th, and 6th density positive or service to others orientated Social memory complexes use both the slingshot and the personality discipline type of effect for travel, or do they use only one? Really good question. Got it. Ross says the positively oriented social memory complex will be attempting to learn the disciplines of mind, body, and spirit. However, there are some which, having the technology available to use intelligent energy forces to accomplish travel, do so while learning the more appropriate disciplines. This is right on point. So, let's take us on Earth, okay, and our technology. Let's say we finally get our grip into electrogravitics. I mean, I'm saying we obviously have it, but it's hidden. It's not available right now. When it becomes available, and we transcend into fourth density, as a positively oriented social memory complex, we will be attempting to learn the disciplines of mind, body, spirit, the disciplines of mind, body, and spirit. So, in the positive path, we're learning ourselves. We're seeking the self. Okay, we're going through this inner path. That's the positive side. The negative side would be to explore the outer side. You know, you are a thing here that needs to get a grip on reality. The grip on reality, like I said, is to beat nature into submission, and others are slaves to me. That is the negative path. But in the positive path, they say having the technology available, us who have the technology when we get into fourth density, we can still use some of that technology to travel. See? So while learning the more appropriate disciplines, which are the mind, body, spirit disciplines, disciplines of personality, that will be our goal, but we're still using, our vehicles for travel in fourth density. This is going to be part of the evolution as we transcend the technology, the physical technology, into a more inner technology, which again, this is not something that happens in fourth density. We are the creator, which means that, like I said, these mystics in Asia and Eastern philosophies, they have accomplished this. They can actually do this. They can travel. They are unfettered by the self, the apparent self. So it is possible. That is not the goal of third density. The goal of third density is simply to polarize yourself either towards the positive or to the negative. That's the density of choice. But what I'm saying is that it is possible. You don't have to, but it is possible here. Anyhow, we go into question 4. We're done. Goes on. Really good questions again. Then I'm assuming in the positively oriented social memory complexes that a much higher percentage of them use the personality disciplines for this travel. Is this correct? Ross says this is correct. As positive fifth density moves into sixth, there are virtually no entities which any longer use outer technology for travel or communication. You can see how the evolution, the natural evolution of a positive being, let's just call it a positive being, social memory complex, mind, body, spirit complex, just a being, an entity. As the positive entity moves in wisdom, there are virtually no entities in sixth density that use outer technology for travel or communication, because we have mastered so far that inner communication, or that self-communication, self with other self. You see? So I think this is a beautiful question, because it does illustrate how we go into evolution. And once again, I'm saying this is not only possible in the higher densities, because all those densities are present here. So we can develop that here too. Spectrum is probably the right word that I want to introduce here too, because people may say like, well, when am I going to accomplish that? Well, you have to start somewhere. You start now. If it takes you 3 seconds, 30 years, 30 incarnations, who cares? It's where you start. And the more you contribute to that in your inner seeking, then the more you're going to be developed in all densities. So I'm just mentioning that for completion. So the next question. Now, fantastic question again. I'm loving Dunn here. So he says, Could you give me the same information on the negatively oriented social memory complexes as to the ratios, how they use the slingshot or other effects, or other effect personality disciplines? So we're gonna get into negative now. So Ra, being Ra, they say, the 4 density negative uses the slingshot gravitic light effect, perhaps 80% of its memberships being unable to master the disciplines necessary for alternate methods of travel. In 5th density negative, approximately 50% at some point gained the necessary discipline to use thought to accomplish travel. As the 6th density approaches, the negative orientation is thrown into confusion and little travel is attempted. What travel is done is perhaps 73% of light thoughts. Okay, so now we're looking at the dark side of the evolution. Evolution into 4 density, the majority, 80% of them are unable to use the disciplines of personality, basically, for other than the slingshot effect. So they're still using these outer, which clicks perfectly with the mentality of a negative being and what they accomplish. What they accomplish is manipulation of the environment, the people, the energy, which, you know, it's their right and they're privileged to do so. So 80% are going to be using in 4 density negative. I think that's the whole 4 density negative. 80% is still travel. So that's probably why there is a lot of Orion group UFOs seen in the skies and so on, because they're using a lot of this. You can see why is the Confederation not traveling and coming here in ships? Now you can understand. They're doing it by mind. They're doing it by their inner seeking. I mean, they don't even use this at 6th density anymore. So 5th density, they're learning how to, I mean, they're already past that point of using it, and they're learning more and more. It's a very introspective. 5th density is very personal, individual. But in any case, when they say in 5th density negative, approximately half of them are still using both, basically. So half and half. Half of them are using the slingshot effect, and the other one is using the disciplines of personality, because they are developing that's 5th density work. See, as you gain wisdom. So as the 6th density approaches, the negative orientation is thrown into confusion, and little travel is attempted, of course. As 6th density approaches, they're approaching unity, and that just doesn't click with them. They're saying, how can I be united with I just can't. You know, there's a separation. I'm superior than them. You can be, but you can't be superior, because for you to be one, there can be no polarity. So no inferior, no superior. You have to be one with them, and it's just a lot of confusion. I can understand that. We understand 6th density negatives. Poor brothers. Or confused brothers, not poor brothers. What travel has done is perhaps 73% of light thought, which again is disciplines of personality. So I love that percentage. 20%, 27% then is done through other means, which might be the slingshot effect. I don't know. So, question 6. We're flying through this. Love it. Is there any difference then at, say, close to the end of 5th density in the disciplines of personality required for this travel between positive and negative orientation, higher 5th density? Let me reread this again. So I don't think I got it. Is there any difference then at, say, close to the end of 5th density in the disciplines of personality required for this travel between positive and negative orientation, higher 5th density? Oh, okay. So higher 5th density. Any difference between disciplines of personality for positive and negative? Got it. So Ra says there are patent differences between the polarities, but no difference whatsoever in the completion of the knowledge of the self necessary to accomplish this discipline. So, where do we go? Here. There. So there are marked differences between these polarities, obviously, and but there's no difference in the completion of the knowledge of the self necessary to accomplish this discipline, because you're learning to know yourself. Now, how you use the knowledge of yourself, again, is it determines your polarity. Because I'll give you the third density example here. You learn that you're God. What are you going to do with that? What does that mean to you? Depending on your confusion, your direction, your path, you may say, I am God, and so is everyone else. Because if I am God and I see others like me, then obviously there are gods too. But they can't be God without all of this being God. So, yippee, everything is one. We kind of, we won the game already by realizing this. Again, this is not an intellectual understanding, but rather a feeling that comes out. So that would be a way to feel God. But we know that there are other gods or people that feel gods, and they say, I am God. I am the ruler of this family, village, civilization, country, planet. And so their delusion is into believing that they are gods in the sense of proprietary. They are owners. I own this universe. I'm going to see. We can even say this. We can see this. You don't have to be a philosopher to understand this. When we put the conquest of space, we need to conquer space. We're going to conquer the moon and Mars and Titan and Europa, and we're going to terraform it and all this. This is just, men working out of fear of not having enough, and they need to have more. It's an external view. It's an external seeking. And you can see how destructive that is, because you're still seeing everything as danger to you. So you need to conquer it. And so that is the difference that we can see in terms of polarity. There are patent differences between the polarities, but no difference whatsoever in the completion of the knowledge of the self. I mean, you're knowing yourself as a God. Now, how do you use that is the question. How do you use it determines your polarity. So, I think we're getting into the end of these questions. Let me check really quick. I'm going to question 7. Then this might be the last one. It's a little bit long, but still, I think plenty of time. All right, Don says, am I correct then in assuming that discipline of the personality, knowledge of self, and control, shall I say, in strengthening of the will, would be what any fifth density entity would see as those things of importance? Any fifth density entity. Yes, okay. So Rod's going to correct something which obvious at this point with the word control. I think they'll say it, yes. In actuality, Rod says, these things are of importance in third through early 7 densities. See, this one phrase is beautiful. You can spend a whole hour here. But let's keep reading. Rod says, the only correction in nuance that we would make is your use of the word control. It is paramount that it be understood that it is not desirable or helpful to the growth of the understanding, may we say, of an entity by itself to control thought processes or impulses, except where they may result in actions not consonant with the law of one. Okay, so Don's question is about early fifth density or just fifth density in general. Strengthening of the will would be what any fifth density would see as those things of importance. Basically, the important things to develop discipline of personality would be, one of the most important things would be the strengthening of the will. And this particular point, like Ross said, is important in any density, from third to early 7. You see, third, why not first or second? Because there is no awareness of self. It is still the creator. It is still the essence of the creator moving in exquisite patterns of evolution through matter, to animals and plants, and finally to self-conscious. See, everything is conscious, but it's not self-conscious, which means it cannot reflect its consciousness into itself. The way you can check this is ask your dog, are you aware? And they will not understand the question. Okay? They will not be able to tell you, yeah, I am. You say this to another human, and they'll say, well, obviously. That's so obvious to us. That is the key. Are you aware? So, in self-awareness, the strengthening of the will is important. You are self-aware, obviously, from third density all the way to early seventh density. Because in mid-seventh density, you start just melting with oneness. And you are not self-aware anymore, but simply awareness. That's it. You can, if you want to do this exercise, because you're thinking like, oh, come on, Gabe, that's like in 7th density, I'm only this human here, poor human. Well, do this, the following. You want to feel 7th density consciousness? Stop thinking. Actually, that's always a terrible advice. Observe your thoughts and realize that there is a watcher, a seer, a seeing, that knowing that you are. That is the base of everything. If you can just rest in that knowing, that is what's called God's peace, harmony, eternal love, whatever. All of that is what you are. That is consciousness. You are consciousness. So that is 7th density. You are not aware of anything. You're not aware of yourself. You are awareness. So you can see that in 7th. You see how I can just take this, through an hour, but I don't have to. Again, Ra corrects and says the only correction, nuance is that don't use the word control, because control seems to elicit that idea that we need to control our thoughts, control our impulses, and so on. But they say only when they may not be consonant with the law of one. But obviously, if you have an urge to slap your boss for some reason, well, that may not be consonant. I'm not saying don't do it. A lot of people have done it. It might, get you what you want faster without you even knowing it. But again, no, I'm not. I'm not provoking anything. See, I'm losing polarization here. Come on. So that's the point. It's just, don't use your impulses. You control yourself, or you're just gonna hurt yourself. This can get taken way out of context. Control yourself. But no, they're saying, in terms of the developing of these disciplines of personality, don't control yourself. Be. That's why I'm gonna call it, in Buddhism, just to generalize it. In Buddhism, they just tell you, don't repress anything. Just be. Just be who you are. That's why they have the precepts, of course, where you're not supposed to have to kill, to abuse your passion, to steal, to use wrong speech, and so on, because that's non-consonant with the law of one. Basically, if you read the precepts, you say like, oh, okay, these are not consonant. Anything else you can do, just go do it, explore it, do it. Why are you repressing yourself? Don't repress yourself unless it's not consonant with the law of one, which again, you have it embedded in your mind. You know this since childhood. So Ra will elaborate a little bit more on control when they say control may seem to be a shortcut to discipline, peace, and illumination. However, this very control potentiates and necessitates the further incarnative experience in order to balance this control or repression of that self which is perfect. So basically, karma. That's right there in a nutshell. You create more karma. You need to express this repression. There's not much to say here, so I'll just go to the next part. What Ra says: instead, we appreciate and recommend the use of your second verb in regard to the use of will. Acceptance of self, forgiveness of self, and the direction of the will. This is the path towards the disciplined personality. Your faculty of will is that which is powerful within you as co-creator. You cannot ascribe to this faculty too much importance. Thus, it must be carefully used and directed in service to others for those upon the positively oriented path. So these are the verbs: acceptance, forgiveness, or forgiving, and the direction of the will. You see, acceptance of self is actually liberation of the perceived self. Does that make sense? Liberation of the ego is acceptance of self. Because the ego is always concerned with, lack of something. So when you no longer feel lack of anything, you're accepting what is, not even yourself. Accepting what is. Forgiveness is, again, to me, it's just another way of saying accepting. But you see, it's the process. I would say forgiveness is the process of accepting. See, once you accept something, that process is saying, well, this, what I am is what I've always been. And there is no, use an example. What you consider to be yourself through the egoic mind, which identifies with thoughts, moments, events, and so on. When you consider to be that, you were judging yourself into that, the chain of events that you were, the chain of personalities, of beings. I was a bad husband. I was a terrible son. I was, an unworthy employee. Whatever. Just fill it up with any thoughts you may have of yourself. All of those things. Even the happy ones. Oh, I'm excellent. I'm superior. I'm great. All this stuff. I am the universe. Sorry, sometimes it gets there. So, with these in mind, you accept the fact that liberation, right? That liberation of that automatically makes you realize that the judging of that was in vain. That the judging was actually non-existent. It was just a process too. And so that is forgiveness of the self, forgiveness of that which goes. You are no longer affected by this. And now the direction of the will. The direction of the will is, well, what do you want to do? What is it? What is it that you want to do? So they say this is the path towards the disciplined personality. The discipline means, in this context, and I'll probably repeat this for a long time. You see, we hear the word discipline and we're like, oh, I have to be disciplined. I have to do things and I have to consistently do it. Well, you're very disciplined in being yourself. That is who you are. See, you've never stopped being who you are. I'm not talking about the ego, whatever ideas you have of yourself, identity, labels, and all that stuff which abounds our reality right now, because we're so full of labels that you can put on yourself. And so I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about who you are. You've always been you. Is there a point where you can say, well, I wasn't that wasn't me? Again, there are ways you can use that through the ego, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you being you. So that that disciplined personality is just being that. Discipline is, for example, somebody who's very disciplined at playing music. It's not because he has to. It's because he loves doing it. So he develops a discipline. Discipline used to be a synonym for, your not your career, but what you do. What disciplines do you practice? That's the type of discipline we're talking about here. So the disciplined personality, which is, again, and the word personality doesn't, I'll give him a break. Language is language, man. So personality is just who you are. What flows through you. The Tao that's flowing through you. Your faculty of will is that which is powerful within you as co-creator. Yes, it is. Your faculty of will is that which makes you the co-creator, actually, I would say. You cannot ascribe to this faculty too much importance. Well, of course, that is the center. That is the current of the river. See, a river is not a river because it has water. That could be a lake, it could be the ocean. A river is a river because it has flow. It has that flow, which is not, how can you measure it? You cannot measure it. You can't point it at it. It's a flow. It simply goes. That is your faculty of will. It's ever present. So you cannot ascribe too much importance to this. It is what it is. It's the more you are into this, the more you feel it, as opposed to seeing it from a third or an external view, and looking at yourself as somebody. Ego. Thought it must be carefully used and directed in service to others for those upon the positively oriented path. Of course, yes. Once you know that this flow is the flow, you naturally, you don't have to, but if you're positively oriented, then you probably should, and what is that? Well, you already know what service to others is. So, we have more from Ra. This is the last part for today. Ra says, there is great danger in the use of the will as the personality becomes stronger, for it may be used even subconsciously in ways reducing the polarity of the entity. Sure thing. You see, we can get an example here from not too far from what we talk about. The fifth density, who is developing the disciplines of personality for travel, or for itself, but for travel as well. They're using the disciplines of personality as you become, as you evolve. They're using it for the wrong means, or at least, not for those means that are going to bring them into unity, right? But they're still using it for evolution, so even that's not proper to say. In any case, what Ra is saying here that there is great danger in using the will of personality. I'll reread it. There is great danger in the use of the will as the personality becomes stronger, for it may be used even subconsciously in ways reducing the polarity of the entity. What can be said here? There are always ways in which we can... I think a good example of this, even though it's probably not tied into this lesson, shall we say, that Ra gives us. When there is the knowledge that we are spiritual beings, and I certainly went through this as somebody who had no idea what spirit was, and I was like, wow, I'm a spiritual being. The ego goes right into it and says, yeah, man, we just discovered we're a spiritual being. And, it's funny. That's just how it happens. So there is danger in using this, as the will of the personality becomes stronger, knowing the self, there is danger, subconscious ways of reducing the polarity of the entity, because now, as I'm a spiritual person, I may feel superior to others who are not. And we just look at them and say, well, poor peasants, poor sheeple, they don't know anything. They're just ignorant cattle. But then, some of them are going to want to talk to me, and so I'm going to be their guru. You see how you reduce your polarity there? Because you're using negative polarization. So the more you know yourself, the more there is, danger for you to subconsciously use this in ways of reducing your polarity. So the only thing I can say here is that your guiding star, your North Pole, should be always unity. If you're not seeing the unity and equality in some degree, it's not that you're wrong, it's that you have further exploration to say, wow, there's more I can see here, and I can expand this bliss of looking at others and saying, wowee, this is it. See, and you have that possibility of expanding yourself. So I'm gonna cut it here. This is question 7, session 52. Next video, next part, we're gonna continue with question 8, which goes into wonders and other questions there. I forgot, I think something about harvest. It's always interesting. Conclusions. We spoke about the inner and outer journeys. I am going to bring it out of the esoteric and more to the exoteric views of this session, or at least this first part of the session, and say that the biggest lesson for me here is to not first let us acknowledge that there is a propensity and there is a inertia that we have to be more infatuated with the external world. And the external world is not technology or material stuff, but also the body and the self, the apparent self. We have an obsession with that. And so, with that being acknowledged, it's not to say that all of that is bad and that we should, regress into the Big Bang, into the singularity and remain there. That is as off, and I'm being careful not to use words that may say that something is it's inappropriate, because it is a way. I mean, you can go either way, it doesn't matter. But acknowledging that part that we are obsessed with, and the ignorant part acknowledged as well, which is the inner self, we can go and explore that inner self to balance out whatever we are out here. You see, and this is the balancing to me that exists, at all points. You can be a very mystic person and be completely absorted on hours on your inner self, and there's nothing wrong. But I would argue, and this is not me, I mean, this has been said and explored and expanded through the philosophies, Oriental philosophies of non-dualistic views, that there must be a balance. I'll share you a story that I learned from Alan Watts, that his friend R.H. Blythe, I believe, he asked a Zen master once, if you knew this was the end of the world and you had only one thing to do, what would you do? And he gave options, like, would you go have your a cup of tea? Would you enjoy the company of a beautiful woman? Would you go for a walk? Would you do, whatever pleases you? And the master said, I would sit in zazen, which means just sitting in meditation. That's what Zen means, grossly speaking. And, the R.H. Blythe was disappointed, because Zen is not just sitting silently with your eyes closed or open, slightly open, as Zen is wont to do. And it's not about that. It's about everyday life activity. Zen is present everywhere. Zen is your nature. So no matter what you do. And so there is a propensity to go into, there is a divine way of proceeding with life. And that is the delusion that we have. So, in the same way, I think there is the beauty of balance between the external and the internal world. It's just that, we must admit, and we have to submit to the reality that we are too invested in the external world. And our fears, our biggest problems stem from that obsession. So we come back a little bit more into the unexplored realm of the self, which is the inner one, and we balance it out. So some people may be too far out here or too far out here. Let me correct that. Too far in and too far out. And, whatever the balance may be there, I think it's just the possibilities that we have. You see, with balance, I'm not saying that this is the way. I'm saying it's a possibility. And I think most scholars, in terms of non-dual approaches, and Ra would even say that what we seek is balance, because that's what's Ra is saying. You know, they always say it doesn't matter what your activated energy centers is, the balance being. And so we're talking about that here, and I believe this is the best conclusion I can get out of this first part of session 52. I have nothing else to say. I ran out of words and explanations, interpretations, opinions, speculations, and so on, all of that just flourish out of me for no reason. I'm glad you enjoyed this. I'm glad you have been enjoying all the other sessions. We have a lot more to cover, of course. Still have more than 50 sessions. And for those who don't know already, this is book 3 of the original 4 books. 5th being only personal material. We are going to start getting into sort of different... We're going to go all over the place, I think, in this 3rd book. And then we're going to settle with the tarot, which is really interesting, the archetypical mind. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for enjoying these videos, for being there, and for getting something out of this. I really enjoy doing this. This is not a chore for me. This is something I look forward to do whenever I have the time, the commitment, and I feel the energy right to do it. So today I felt like recording this, happy that I did, and I have nothing else to say. You know the drill. Support the channel in the description. Share, subscribe, like, whatever it is that you want to do. I don't know. Flag this video as inappropriate. Whatever you want to do. Just do something. And I'll see you in part 2 of session 52.